Ever noticed how your fuel gauge seems to drop faster than it used to? Same commute, same driving style, no aggressive acceleration, no speeding. You fill the tank, drive carefully, and somehow you're getting 50, sometimes 60 miles less per tank compared to last year. Most drivers shrug it off. They blame cheap gas, worn spark plugs, winter fuel blends, or just say the car is getting old. That mindset is exactly why this problem keeps stealing your money. Because this isn't normal wear. It's not bad luck. It's a quiet loss happening every single mile, hidden under the hood. Modern vehicles sold in the United States rely on a network of sensors that act like the brain of the fuel system. When these sensors are clean and accurate, your engine runs efficiently. When they're dirty or contaminated, they start feeding bad information to the computer. The ECU believes those lies and responds the only way it knows how, by injecting more fuel than necessary. No warning light. No obvious symptom. Just a steady drain on your wallet every time you pass a gas station. Here's the frustrating part. You can drive into a dealership, pay around $150 just for a diagnostic scan, and they'll tell you everything looks fine because there's no check engine light. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly where 5 of these fuel-wasting sensors are located, why they quietly destroy your gas mileage, and how you can clean or fix them for less than $10 in most cases. And make sure you watch until the end, because the number 1 sensor on this list controls your entire engine strategy. Ignore it, and it won't just burn extra fuel. It can take out your catalytic converter, which in the US can easily mean a 4-figure repair bill. Let's stop the theft and take that money back. Number 1. Coolant temperature sensor, also known as the ECT. Most people assume that if the temperature needle sits right in the middle, everything is fine. But that's a dangerous misunderstanding. In a modern fuel-injected engine, the ECT works like the choke used to on old carbureted cars. When you cold start your engine, fuel doesn't atomize well. To keep the engine running smoothly, the computer enters what's called open-loop operation. In this mode, fuel economy doesn't matter. The ECU deliberately runs the engine rich, injecting extra fuel until it believes the engine has reached operating temperature. The problem starts when the tip of the ECT sensor becomes coated with coolant sludge, rust, or mineral buildup from years of heat cycles. Once contaminated, the sensor becomes slow and inaccurate. It may report that the engine is at 140 degrees Fahrenheit when it's actually closer to 190. The computer believes the engine is still cold and refuses to switch to efficient closed-loop operation. The result is brutal for fuel economy. You end up driving all day in warm-up mode, burning roughly 10 to 15% more fuel than necessary without realizing it. To check it, locate the ECT sensor, usually threaded into the engine near the thermostat housing. If the tip looks brown, crusty, or corroded, wiping it off isn't enough. Replacement is often the smartest move, especially since most ECT sensors cost under $20 in the US aftermarket. If you do attempt cleaning, use a brass wire brush and electrical contact cleaner to expose clean metal again. Number 2. Intake air temperature sensor, or IAT. Engines don't burn air by volume. They burn oxygen by mass. Cold air is dense and oxygen-rich. Hot air is thinner and carries less oxygen. To maintain the ideal air-fuel ratio of 14.7 to 1, the ECU must know exactly how hot the incoming air is. The issue is where this sensor lives. In most US market vehicles, the IAT sits directly in the intake tube or intake manifold. Over time, it gets coated in oil vapor from the PCV system and fine dust that sneaks past the air filter. This buildup acts like insulation. Think of it as a winter jacket wrapped around the sensor. When cooler outside air rushes in while you're driving, the sensor can't react quickly because it's buried under grime. It falsely reports hotter intake air temperatures. The ECU responds by pulling ignition timing to protect the engine from detonation. That loss of timing makes the car feel sluggish, forcing you to press the accelerator harder just to keep up with traffic. More throttle equals more fuel burned. This is one of the easiest fixes on the entire list. Find the IAT sensor on your intake tube, usually held in by a clip or a simple twist lock. Remove it and spray the sensing element with electronics cleaner or MAF cleaner. Never touch the sensor with your fingers. The oils on your skin can damage it. Once that layer of dirt is gone, throttle response improves immediately, and fuel efficiency follows. Number 3. Mass Airflow Sensor, or MAF. A lot of drivers believe this sensor only needs attention when a check engine light pops on. That belief is expensive. Every mile you drive with a dirty MAF, you're paying for it at the pump. Here's how it works. Inside the MAF is a tiny platinum wire heated to a precise temperature, often around 200 degrees Celsius above ambient air temperature. As air flows into the engine, it cools that wire. The engine computer measures how much electrical current is required to keep the wire hot, and from that calculation, it knows exactly how much air is entering the engine at any moment. Now comes the real villain in the story: oiled aftermarket air filters. When these filters are over-oiled, microscopic droplets of oil get pulled into the intake. Those droplets bake themselves onto the hot platinum wire. Dust sticks to the oil, and over time, a hard crust forms. Air can still pass by, but it can no longer cool the wire correctly. The sensor underreports airflow. The ECU thinks less air is entering the engine than reality, so it injects less fuel. That sounds good on paper, until it isn't. A lean mixture causes hesitation and stumbling. Your foot reacts before your brain does. You press the accelerator harder. The engine jumps into a higher load strategy, dumping more fuel than it would have if the signal had been accurate in the first place. The end result is worse fuel economy doing the exact same driving. This is critical. Never use carb cleaner or brake cleaner on a MAF sensor. Those solvents are too aggressive. They can melt the plastic housing or snap the platinum wire instantly. Remove the sensor housing and use only a dedicated MAF cleaner. It evaporates cleanly and leaves zero residue. Spray the wire from a distance and never touch it with a rag, brush, or your fingers. That wire is incredibly fragile. A properly cleaned MAF can restore 3 to 4 miles per gallon almost immediately. But even with perfect airflow measurement, the engine is still guessing if it doesn't know how hard it's working. That brings us to the next sensor, one that gets clogged by the engine's own exhaust gases and blowby. Number 4. Manifold Absolute Pressure Sensor, or MAP sensor. While the MAF measures airflow, the MAP sensor measures engine load. It monitors intake vacuum to determine whether you're idling, cruising on the highway, or pulling a trailer uphill. Because this sensor mounts directly to the intake manifold, it sits at ground zero for carbon contamination. In modern direct injection engines common in the US market, carbon buildup in the intake happens fast. It's not unusual to remove a MAP sensor and find the tiny sensing port completely plugged with thick black sludge. When that port is clogged, the ECU can't see rapid changes in vacuum. You press the gas pedal, but the computer reacts late. The result is hesitation, followed by a sudden surge as the ECU panics and overfuels to catch up. That constant lag and surge driving pattern absolutely destroys fuel economy. Fixing it is simple. Remove the MAP sensor, usually held in with a single bolt. Inspect the port. If it's clogged, gently clear it with a plastic pick, never metal. Clean the sensor head with MAF cleaner or electronics cleaner. And here's a bonus detail most people miss. Check the rubber O-ring. If it's flattened or cracked, you've got a vacuum leak. That causes high idle, unstable fueling, and wasted gas. A new O-ring often costs less than $1 and fixes all of it. At this point, we've corrected air temperature, airflow, and engine load. But none of that matters if the authority figure of the fuel system is slow to react. This next sensor has the power to override everything we just talked about. Number 5. Oxygen sensor before the catalyst converter, the famous pre-catalyst O2 sensor. There's a myth that oxygen sensors either work or they fail. Reality is much more expensive. Oxygen sensors get lazy long before they actually fail. A brand new upstream O2 sensor rapidly switches voltage from about 0.1 to 0.9 volts several times per second. Those rapid switches allow the ECU to constantly fine-tune fuel delivery to stay at the perfect air-fuel ratio. As mileage climbs, usually past 75,000 miles, contaminants like oil ash, sulfur, silicone, and combustion byproducts coat the sensing element. The sensor still functions, but it responds slowly. Instead of precise micro-adjustments, the ECU starts overcorrecting. It adds too much fuel, then pulls too much away, then adds again. The engine spends a huge portion of its life running slightly rich. A lazy upstream O2 sensor often won't trigger a check engine light. It will simply steal around 15% of your fuel economy quietly. Worse than that, the excess unburned fuel ends up inside your catalytic converter. Over time, it overheats and melts the honeycomb structure inside. What could have been a simple $60 sensor replacement turns into a $1,500 catalytic converter job, sometimes more in states with strict emissions laws. Can you clean an O2 sensor? In some cases, people remove them and soak the tip in gasoline or carefully burn deposits off. But realistically, this is the one sensor where replacement is usually the smart move. If your vehicle has over 100,000 miles and the upstream O2 sensor has never been replaced, do it. The fuel savings alone typically pay for it in a few months. There's one last hidden player worth mentioning: the fuel rail pressure sensor. On modern vehicles, if this sensor drifts out of calibration, it can command the fuel pump to deliver excessive pressure. That extra pressure forces fuel past injectors even when they're supposed to be closed. If you've addressed everything else and still notice a strong fuel smell or unexplained consumption, this sensor deserves inspection. The takeaway is simple. Your car isn't just getting older, it's receiving dirty information. Replace the ECT if your engine never truly leaves warm-up mode. Strip the insulation off the IAT sensor. Clean the MAF hot wire correctly. Clear carbon from the map sensor and make sure its seal is intact. Replace a lazy upstream O2 sensor before it takes your catalytic converter with it. Don't let small, inexpensive sensors turn into thousands of dollars lost at the pump. But here's the final twist. Cleaning sensors is only half the battle. If you're filling up with so-called top-tier gasoline believing it's protecting your engine, you might be falling for one of the biggest marketing myths in the automotive world. Click the next video to see why the gas station you trust could actually be destroying the very sensors you just fixed. Watch it before your next fill-up.